What's up, amigos? Today we're going to do a metagame results and observations type of video. I've been doing an article series and I am behind. It's been a busy week for me, so I decided to make these two events from the prior weekend into a video format. And let me know, constructive feedback that you like. I've been hearing that you guys want me to dive into some of the more unique decks or things that stand out a lot more and also put my perspective on that. So I'm going to lean more into that and also see if you like this video format rather than just article reading at that point too. So I'm going to cover Puerto Rico first, and we actually have some numbers and also some of the unique decks that we're going to go into. So starting with the premium format. So the numbers that I got is that 36 players were participating. So with top 4, we did notice there's Vanquisher, there's 2 DPs, and then 1 Gurguit. So these decks I would expect to be top contenders for sure. And as well, looking into top 8, we have a diversity breakout still, where really the DPs are the ones that repeat, and also like technically Shadow Paladin, but one of them is more of a raging form, where the other one I'm assuming is Luard as well. Very diverse, and so some decks that I want to dive in a little bit deeper is the DP deck. So we're seeing that they're playing what you expect, like Taser Lynch, and then also the Doll Arm, where it gets plus 30k if your opponent has 10 more cards, which we're still in a metagame where they build a massive amount of hand. And DP is really cool because Die Liner actually gives them the 15 or the 10k shield to your grade 3 units, and I can see that they're really focused on that. They're not playing any Forbidden Doll, they're just playing the Sanctitude, and it's units, not cards, so you can't even guard with the grade 3 Forbidden Doll, but just throw it out there. What I did notice about this deck is that they decided to go with the Vanguard. This is like additional 15k shield that you can lean on. So my thought is that they really wanted to survive to make sure that they get to their big plays. And of course, they're playing the Commander Laurel, given their double the power and then crit as well. And then of course, being able to break Sentinels with like nullifying their events with Linka. So nothing too crazy. But DP is showing representation still, which is really awesome for them. And kudos to the players, obviously, for top 4. The other deck that I wanted to point out was Gurguit in premium format. So I've been hoping to see a top with this because Gurguit has actually a fighting contending chance, but you can go in so many directions. I've actually been playtesting, and we'll do a deck profile in the future soon as well for players to like have a template and go from there. But essentially, because of history collection, we're able to use the G Gurguit and be able to go Campbell. You're able to get the 2 Excel circles, really pot a greed in a sense, and really set yourself up. But what's really cool in premium, this is legal. We have Percival. You can play 4 copies of Percival too as well. So it's a phenomenal play that you can just generate 3 Excel circles the moment you go grade 3 turn. It doesn't matter if you're going first or second. So it's very powerful in my eyes. And if you're doing Excel 2, you're drawing cards in addition to. So you're still gaining advantage and generating an advantage at that point too. So you may have seen the unique grade 3s that they're playing. So they are playing the Forbidden Doll, which I would definitely recommend. This is another way to like search your Percivals too. So I can see why they felt comfortable going to 3 Percival. This is basically the 4th Percival. You could play 4 Percival and also this. So you can have like the 5th Percival too. So that's one way to look at it. But their grade 3 choices are pretty unique. No matter what, you're gonna get Percival at that point. So what I've seen with Forbidden Doll is that you typically want to have 3 options if possible, ideally. One option is always one of them you're gonna get regardless of situations, and then the other 2 are pretty much like opposite scenarios. So if you do have more counterblast, you can get Mox/Dragon, and you can extend more attacks that way to help seal the deal. The other card though is an interesting choice. I've seen this card too, and I've considered this card. It really just gets over damage triggers, and so whenever it's your opponent drives checks or damage checks a trigger this turn, this gets plus 10k in a shield. So this can potentially be also guard during your opponent's turn, but during your turn this also becomes a little bit bigger to get over triggers, and it has the second skill too. But I don't think they actually play the over trigger because I checked earlier. But if your opponent's greater than 14k, then you can actually increase this unit's power by it, and essentially you just break the difference, assuming you do pay for the counterblast and go that route too. So it's an interesting tech. I think that was a pretty cool choice. Furthermore, into the grade 2 slots, this can go many ways. The common thing that I've been seeing is Canaris. This is really an attack extender during the battle phase, so whenever you call this in its place, you can discard a card and look at the top 3 and call grade 2 or less. This will extend attacks for free, like no counterblast, no soul blast. You're discarding a card, But if you're willing to do that, I would say that's definitely worth it at that point. They're playing the 4 Aglavale, which is right. That's fine. You can play 3 too. You can get away with that. What's interesting is that he's playing the Deer Room, which I would agree to, because you can help with the consistency there. And then this Arthun is really the resist for the entire board. So like, as soon as you put this on the front row, everything else with a different card name from this card, essentially everything else, cannot be chosen by your opponent's card effects. So, and it's continuous. So this works on your opponent's turn, this works on your turn, and so you have like no fear at that point too. They have to get rid of this card, especially against like Berlin Blizzard, Denial Griffin, Cannoneer. Like, you don't have to worry about it, and so this card can be definitely looked into. I see that they're going with the Josephus instead of like the usual Dindrain, for example, too, so you can get more draw power and also like be able to call itself. And then they playing someone else like the stand trigger. I've considered that too. This is a really good stand trigger because you get to draw a card and then you give something power. Sometimes it helps makes those numbers, and then it goes back into deck on top of that, so you can have like another attack potentially in your drive tracks. But G-Zone looks pretty solid too. They are playing the Ultima. As you can see, there's no OT. I've considered this too myself. The other OT that I would consider in this deck, I would not consider the Catter Sanctuary anymore, because you could deck out the blue OT. I think is the best because you get the crit pressure. The red OT can help with more attacks if you want to go that route, but I feel like the crit pressure is a lot more scarier. So diving into the rest of the top 8 for this premium format, the surprise deck, exactly, is Shiranui. And so I've always curious that Shiranui is a great contender in this metagame too. Like, Mizukaze is still a phenomenal card on restricting, so if you time it well, it's really good. They decided to go a more pure Shiranui build. You got 4 Oboro, you got 4 of the V series original OG. And it's just such a great rearguard too. It's 22k beater for free, and then you get to draw and then put into Soul for Mizukaze, and then of course bounce and discard your opponent's cards essentially. So I noticed that they went to 4 Ungai too, so this is really what deals with like damage check triggers, but also like the OT too. Like, this is really the saving grace with the domination attacks too, because sometimes they may take those dominated attacks and then they get a trigger or the LT, and then like there goes your turn, right? Ungai helps. So I see they have the Tobutachi for more consistency. So if they're willing to pay for the Counter Blast or the Soul Blast, that they're willing to get it, which is fine. The Forbidden Dawn, they got grade 3 targets. It's Mizukaze and really the OG Shiranui, so it looks like they're doing that. What I realized too, in it doesn't come up as often, if you use one of your grade 3 heals early on, you can Forbidden Dawn from the drop zone, and then because you have cards like Yamashibuki, you can like bounce it back to your hand, and I'm like, wow, that's really smart to reuse like grade 3 heals. Also, you could search it from deck if you feel like you need it defensively, so that's another route. You just need something to bounce it at that point too, so always keep that in mind. And then the G zone obviously looks pretty standard. I would expect definitely for Rin, Oboro, Makuro. They're playing the Drachma, gotcha, and they're playing the other Stride. Nubatama has very situational strides too, so it just really depends on the experience and the matchups that they've practiced too. So kudos to this player as well. The last top 8 deck that I want to dive into is Raging Form, which is a fan favorite. I definitely have Raging Form as a guilty pleasure, and skill issues. That's funny for the deck name. So I noticed that they went 4-4. Just went straight Raging Form with 4 of the Raging Fall. I'm surprised there's no Slay Hacks. I would consider like the 5th card being like a Slay Hacks to help with that consistency. But I can see that they're relying on the Ify more as well. They're playing 4 of this on top of Reno, which is a phenomenal top 3 searcher when it hits, when it boosts as well, when the boost hits as well. What I noticed though, like obviously with Dark Blast and Mana, those are like for real like necessary, but I've seen players bump up Rukia a lot, and I think it's just because of the ride effect. Like it's worth it in their eyes, and I can see that they're also like looking for it and searching and bottom decking and stuff like that. So I can see why they went this more pure route. And then also like Rikia, still a great card too that you want to maximize if you can. I'm surprised they're not playing the grade 1 Revenger PG, because they are playing the heal. And the reason I say that is because they can search it potentially from that and grab it and have a PG that's kind of pseudo searchable. But that's fine. I mean, they went for the PG. Oh, they're only playing 3 draw PGs. Okay, gotcha. Oh, there it is, the Sanctitude. Got it. Okay, so they went for the Sanctitude instead of the Revenger BG. Okay, fair enough. I see. And then you got the G-Zone. This is what I would expect too. 2 more Fessa, because you never know. Chain Ranker, because you can copy Raging Form, do Raging Form shenanigans even as a Stride. Drag Abyss, Counter Charge. I'm interested in how often this came up, the Helheim. especially since he has 3 copies in there too. And then Diablo, just you never know. Diablo is pretty solid sometimes, and especially if you're expecting like a Geese matchup, like this could come up, but it doesn't hurt to have a pair. But overall, there's a good amount of diversity in Puerto Rico, so shout out to those players as well. Thank you for this data as well. Now going into standards, so in participant numbers, we had actually 66 players. In top 4, literally what you expect. Chrono Jet, Stride deck sets, and Gandiva. But shout out to these players. Obviously, you got to play these decks to still top and everything like that. You know, what I noticed too, Chrono Jet still the Chrono Jet that you expect. There's Messiah showing some representation still. Some can argue that Chrono Jet is the better Stride deck set. And then so just seeing Messiah also in the mix is pretty cool, in my opinion. Just having more diversity. You got Gandiva, also like not surprising. Oh, that's Hank actually. Shout out to Hank. I haven't seen him since World, so and he requalified. So good luck to you, man. You got what it takes. So definitely excited for him. I'll dive into 2 decks. So we'll start with Messiah. So God works in mysterious ways. Amen, brother. But anyway, so it's typically what you expect in Messiah. It looks pretty solid to me. Nothing too crazy. They play some of the fronts. They play the OT obviously with the crits. They are playing the 2 heal that are compensated for the crit factor. So if they expect some of those matchups that they're worried about those, then that would help in those matchups too. But ultimately, it's really what you expect on the metagame approaches. Like Gandiva, for example, has the crit. So that might be what they were looking for, essentially. Now into Hank's build, there is no I in Gandiva. That's funny. It is pretty standard or what you expect too. I can see they're playing 2 of the Cycler over here. They're playing the 3 of the unhit, and then of course they're not playing the arms cards where they can search and decked in. So that's one thing I noticed. But sometimes people just rather play the regular Gandiva right line, which is fine. They're playing 3 Bass Harvests. Okay, you can play 4. I've seen players maximize on that bad boy, and then they have some crunch and crit triggers too. So yeah. And then the rest of top 8, I mean, it's just more of like Gandiva, more Messiah, more Chrono Jet, and then of course the one we'll list too. So this is literally what you expect. I think with the set 12 coming out and then a potential ban list for English to come out soon, we saw some in Japan, like some hits. We may see a shift depending on the timing with that too. But other than that, this really won't change as much moving forward. Okay, so now into V Premium, and so we see a variety in top 4 actually, which is really cool. Thawas is first place. That's awesome. Definitely awesome. We're gonna dive into that guy. Luar, we got Leopold Reverse. That's also another deck that I want to dive into a little more. And then we got Gurgrid also doing, you know, Gurgrid things in V Premium. And as we dig deeper with like the rest of top 8, we see some diversity still. I mean, there's 2 Luards and 2 Leopold Reverses, but we're seeing like Jewel Knights, we're seeing Uranus. So that's like just more diversification. It's nothing like crazy where it's like 5 of a certain deck or something like that. So diving into the first place Thavas for this regional, we noticed that they are playing the 1 Genovius. So for those that don't know, Genovius is really a finisher. So essentially, when you do the pseudo stride turn with Lambros, you're going to end with 2 Excel circles, and then your following turn, you're essentially turn 4, you'll ride Genovius from him. That'll get you the 3rd Excel circle, and with like his effect of 4 damage or more, you're going to get 11 attacks. It's 3 Excel circles into rigor columns, and then the Vanguard. Very solid finisher. You're also able to like use cards of Pursuit Assault. It's going to be plus 15k at least from the Excel circles, and that doesn't even include if it's on one. You got Coral Assault, and you got cards like Narissa that can be abused. And now we got the addition of the promo, the Repress Strike Dragon, so this can also get bigger. It also helps with the consistency because I noticed like you want to ride Nikki just to be able to plus for Thavas, and I think that's why they also added Dennis, especially since like this card can like search grade 2 or less. You can actually search Dennis if you want to ride it as Vanguard, and then you can search Nikki to ride it as Vanguard as well. Like just very solid like card. So Thavas has come a long way and is still like doing well. So kudos to this player. Now Leopold Reverse, and so as we can see, they're playing for the Leopold Reverse. This card is really like powerful in my eyes because like the first effect gives everything else the normal trigger and order card types, and at first it's like that's really random, right? The second effect though, you get all these benefits if they're in a certain order, but since they're all of them, you get all of them. So if it's a normal unit, you check the type 5, call 2 regards, so you're building a field. The second one, if it's a trigger, then you get the continuous skill that all your front units get plus 5k, and then this unit gets plus crit. So your Vanguard gets crit and your entire front row gets plus 5k. So okay, now we're seeing more push numbers and threat pressure. And then the order type will give you an imaginary Excel gift on top of that. So it's just more attacks, more draw power, and everything like that. So it's very solid grade 3 effect in my eyes. Very simple, very straightforward, but it's what you want. And obviously they got cards that make numbers, they got draw power, they use the parakeet to look at the top 7 for a grade 3. That's how they can get like more copies of Leopold. There he is. I was looking for it. Like, yeah. So they play 3 to 4 of the original just to make sure that they get the maximum benefit from that. They could also lock even itself too. So if you had another reverse, it works because it just cares about Leopold only in the name. So, and they play front triggers too because they just want to have maximum pressure on all the attacks. And so just having potentially like +5 from the skill, but also +10k from front trigger, you're hitting over triggers pretty easily, like no problem. Now to BCS Philippines. We have a lot of interesting decks in this one, so I'm excited to dive into this one. So shout out to Derek Dow for getting first. We qualified for Worlds as well. We see Vanquisher, we see Harry, we see Riviere, and then we see Rising Nova. So a lot of great like diversity in the top 4 already. And then going into top 8, we see even more diversity. So there's another Narukami, but we see other good decks like Messiah, Shurnui. We also got the the other mill deck, which I'll cover that one too as well, and then Riviere as well. So a lot of like just different types of decks, which is great to see as well. So diving into Derek's list with Harry. So I faced something similar to Kevin Cho, and I think they were like collaborating on this too. I'm not sure. But essentially this uses the V series Harry style, and you can see it's 3 copies versus the 1 copy from G. Even though History Collection came out, like I felt like the V Harry like with the stage is really beneficial, especially with the draw power that Serie Pop can provide, because every time that it's placed on the stage, you get an imaginary Excel circle, so you get the draw, and you got phenomenal cards to get the dragon, but also like multi-attack, which is the lower pigeon pop as well. And there's a lot of like accessibility that you can use. You still have access to Tricky Assistant, which is a denial griffin type of play to disrupt your opponent. You got phenomenal cards like Dancing Princess of the Night Sky for more consistency of getting your pieces in your soul. Still playing the purple trapezes as well. They're playing 2 Honolus for sure. This does come up, so it can be helpful. You could always just shove this into soul and then like take it out later when you need it, or you can just remove it from play too, so it doesn't like hurt you whatsoever. And they're playing the Harry crits too, so defensively you get draws essentially, which is really appreciated. And in the G zone, definitely 3 Dark Lord Princes. Like you can choose any face-up card and you just rewrite into or restride into it. And when you that, like it's super beneficial. That's typically the play to extend more attacks. And then you got also like the Masquerade Harry as well too. So, and then you got the other cards that help with this. And this can be annoying too, like to disrupt in a way, because it shoves an opponent's rear guard that's still standing. And so it's like the only card that they're still standing. You can get rid of it in that point too. So pretty solid list, man. Great job, y'all. The Better Loop deck. So this is kind of like Melista, but this is not using Melista. I don't know 100% how this loop works, but you see common cards use like Myrtoa, for example. You got the Wedo. And then what really is this, from what I heard, this is more of a turn 4 loop. And it's because you have this card, Crystal Popstar Eve. And oh wow, can they get bigger? No. Essentially, let me see if I can zoom in a little more. There you go. So the first skill is not once per turn. Look at the top card of your deck, and you may call it to the open rearguard circle. And so you can keep doing that as long as you have open rearguard circles. So that's another way to like dig out through your deck. But essentially, you're drawing and going through your deck in the meantime before you get to your turn 4 play, ideally. But I'm sure they have different plays. I mean, Bermuda Triangle is pretty strong because they got cards like Heltrata still, and they have other phenomenal G cards like Side Trying to Call stuff. You know, for example, like Honolly, like they're in the opponent's battle phase too. So like you can really get like still play Vanguard essentially. So it's not just like the mill, but it does have access to the mill. So I just wanted to show this off at least. So more into top 8, we're seeing like what I would expect Messiah Crust. And so I wanted to see and confirm, which, yep, they're playing the 4 Sleep Messiah that gives you the crust. And what's really cool with Link Joker in this case, they have the top 5 grade 2 or less searcher. So this helps you increase the consistency to search this guy out. And on top of your mulligan, if you really like hard mulligan for it, you're more than likely going to get your crests in most of your matchups. which is great. And then you can still rely on the accessibility that like Lane Joker has. Obviously, you have your Messiah strides, especially from the deck set itself. But you also have like the generic premium collection stride that came out too, so you can mess with that. And then if people keep generating gifts, you got Baryon Dragon to like take them away essentially. And then of course this card is the scariest Integral Messiah that reduces your hand by force too. So yeah, definitely really fun deck. They are playing the Hanole too. You could also lock it if you need to extend. Otherwise you'll just have to remove it from play as well. Lastly, for the last Nubatama deck, Nubatama, that's funny. So the card that stood out to me is one of these, the Void Master. I know Saki was playing this against our mirror match in BCS Rosemont, and really it just turns off intercepts. So it may not be as big, but when you have a Mizukaze, your opponent's really likely to use their grade 2 intercepts to like save that hand guarding, where Mizukaze can like it counts what's called, not necessarily moved, right? This eliminates that. And then also, if you're playing the mirror match, you have tokens. You cannot intercept with your tokens either. So that card can actually be a problem. He's playing the 3 Shoujo Doji. I do agree with that. They're playing 3 of Forktail for more soul generation. That makes sense. And they're playing 4 Right 2. This also is another way to like force call something on your opponent's drop zone to the open rear. This can be paired up with an Oboro, and so you can like really shut out 2 different grades at that point too, because you get to choose. So you can choose a grade 1 and grade 0 just to nullify like those cards right off the back. And then if you have this on top of Mizukaze, that is really hard to guard at that point. And so, and the G zone's pretty standard what you expect. Oh, they're playing the Sukumaroken. Sukumaroken. Nice. So I can see that too. Yeah, makes sense. Again, the participation for this was 76 players too. So on to standard, and as we can see, 4 Willistas in top 4. Honestly, it feels like a meme at the same time, but it's not surprising. Willista's such a solid deck. What's sad about this is that we don't really have lists for the rest of top 4, or even top 8, I should say, because I really wanted to see the other deck lists as well, but there's no list on VG Paradox's website, so much for that. But other than that, Willista's very solid, and it performed really well, so there's not really much to say. The player participation was 275 players, so they had a really good turnout for standard, in my opinion. So they definitely had to fight for that, right? So kudos to those players too. And then lastly, V Premium. And so, we're seeing Thavas again, but we're also seeing some more diversity. We see Vanquisher, we see Anj, and we see Fenrir too as well. So shout out to Ken. I've seen him on social media doing his thing over on the other side of the world, so kudos to you, and qualifying for Worlds and also being sponsored. That's awesome. The player participation for V was 153, so that was actually a pretty good turnout for V as well. And diving into the deck list, we're seeing Ken's build for Favas for Marcoon. That's funny. Must be a reference. We are seeing no Genovius in this build, so I'm interested why he opted out of Genovius. But a lot of the grade 2s are very similar, with the exception of Adelaide, which I think he wanted to go more consistent on resting, which I definitely understand, because if you don't rest 3 bodies, Thavas like bricks. You pretty much lose the game at that point. It's really that detrimental. So this helps on getting you pieces that you need, but just having the extra cards to rest, I can see why he went that route instead. And then of course, like you still have cards like Nikki to help search for your Dennis, your essentially Favas too. So that makes sense. You got crits and draws, normal stuff that you would expect. So it worked out for him too, obviously, because he also got first. So congrats again, man. And the last deck that I'll go into a little bit deeper is the Vanquisher deck that got second place. And so Vanquisher is always a fun deck. They're playing the 3 original, 4 full Bronto, 4 Jaggy Shot, but also the 2 Book. The Book is what gives power, draw, and just more offensive power in overall sense. On Vanquisher, what it does, multi-attack, you got multiple Vanguard attacks too on top of that. And then you got binding with like, all these cards that like bind, for example. Chitora, and all these other cards that really like add the pressure too. I would agree with 8 crits too, just having that crit pressure for PGs and the grade 3 heals. Yep, definitely. So very solid build, congrats to that player as well. And just to wrap up with like the rest of top 8, we see an extra Thavas, we see an extra Anj, and we see Mr. Flare Dragon, which is, I'm impressed because there's only 1 extra on Anj V Premium. So I'm sure people are curious for the list. And then we got another Narukami, but this time it's Saber Reverse. Unfortunately, the list, are not available on the website, so I'm not able to even dive deeper into those. I was really hoping for Fenrir too, because I was excited for that too, but it is what it is. But there is diversity, which I appreciate, and we'll continue to see diversity with V Premium overall, which I'm excited for that as well. This prior weekend was packed full, and as you can see, like there were some really cool unique decks in Premium. Standard for the most part stayed the same. I mean, there's a few decks here and there. I really try to look for like things that stand out for that format. It is what it is. V Premium, we're still seeing a lot of diversity, which is really cool. And I hope we'll continue to see more unique lists as well overall. So let me know in the comments if you like this format, the video format, or you'd rather see it in the article format that I've been doing for this article series. I'm open to it. The reason I did this on video is because I was behind, but also like this makes it a little easier to cover multiple like events too. I might do video format for multiple event weekends, and then maybe like if it was just one event, I could do it in one article essentially too. And if you want to support the channel, feel free to use the affiliate links with 50 Card Shop, Trading Card Mint, Card Trader Zero, TCG Player, and then of course, also I offer one-on-one coaching for those players that are still prepping for BCS or also just want to improve in the clans that they want to specialize in Premium as well. So feel free to check it out. Until the next one, amigos. Bye.